First day was the worst day of the whole thing. We left early in the morning from the MTC, and then we ended up getting in Mexico around lunchtime, and then we went to the president's house. So it's all nice still. We had a nice dinner, pre-dinner, and it was nice. But then we went home to the mission house, the mission home, and we got there around. There was a bunch of problems getting there, so we ended up getting there really late, like 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. We had to wake up at 6:30, of course, and so we didn't end up going to bed till about 1:30. Woke up at 6:30. That was already tough because we're not used to all that. We're still getting in the routine. And then there was a leadership conference, and so that's where most of our companions already were. And so we've met our companions, and then we started to head off. And so before, in the Mexico City North Mission, there was 3 states. It was part of Mexico, the state of Mexico, Hidalgo, and Querétaro. Now it's not. Now it's a little different. But I went to Hidalgo the first time, and so we didn't have any cars or anything. So we took. It was me, my new companion, and we were both opening up an area. Another elder and his new companion, and they were opening up an area, and then 2 other guys, and they were just there for the leadership meeting. So we all piled into one taxi with the 3 new guys and my companion's suitcases, because we were all going to new places, into one taxi. And we eventually made it to the bus, and we went on a bus for 3 hours, and we got to Hidalgo. And then once we got there, we had no idea where we were going, and then one elder kind of knew where we were going because he had somewhat been in the area before. And so by this time it's about 4 o'clock at night, in the afternoon. And so then we got another taxi, so we're super cramped again, and we went to this other city. And then by the time we got there, all the buses, the combis they're called, by the time we got there, they had already stopped for the night. And so then we had to take another taxi and then travel another half an hour to this other little village. And by the time we got there, it was already about 12 o'clock at night. And so we had to then call. The taxis didn't even want to take us anywhere now because it's too late. And so I was waiting there. I don't speak the language. Somebody called a member that lived across the hill, and so they had to travel another like half an hour to come get us. And so I was just waiting there. They gave us these orange juices that they have in Mexico. So that was my first drink. It was the cheapest orange juice you could get because I didn't even have my money yet. I just had to borrow from somebody else. And eventually we got on that, and then we got home around 1:30 again, and then at 2 o'clock the assistants had to come because I forgot to sign a form, and so I had to sign a form for my visa and stuff, and then they left, and so we didn't go to bed till about 2:30 that night. And then I woke up again at 6:30 in that morning, and then we were opening up the area, so we had no idea who was a member, we had no idea who was anything, so we just started walking, knocking doors, and eventually we found out who's a member. They told us who else is a member, they told us where the bishop was, and it kind of started from there. But it was a very, very long day. So when I was there, the mission covered 3 states, and it was the top part of the state of Mexico, from a part called Totonilco, north, and so it would be Querétaro and Hidalgo. And so Querétaro, that was like the rich part of Mexico. That's where a lot of people were just very wealthy. I never served there, but that's what I've heard. They're just, a lot of people had nicer houses there. Hidalgo, that's where the country folk are. They all speak really funny. It's all country shack houses, lots of dirt. And then of course the city of Mexico, that's just lots and lots of people and lots of hills. And so when you do go to Mexico, you're going to be walking lots of hills and you're going to lose weight. That's just a gimme. And so yeah, just kind of depend on where you went is how your accent was, and so that changed throughout the mission. The church there, it's grown really, really fast. When I was there, 3 chapels were built and dedicated while I was the 2 years I was there. So one of the areas I served in at the beginning of my mission, there was a house of prayer, and so we served there, and then a certain amount of people had to be in the ward constantly for them to get a chapel. And so 2 transfers after I left, they had enough people, and so they started building a chapel. So before I went home, they already had a chapel there, and so I went back to there just to see the chapel. And it's really beautiful, and it was cool to see that a town that before had nothing, just a little house of prayer that the church rented, to now like a really nice building. So it was cool to see that. On average, it just depends on the ward, but the least members I had was in the house of prayer, and that was usually around 80. But I was in other wards where it's very, very populated with the LDS community, and that was usually around 150 to 200 people. But there's, like, I was in Cuautitlán Izcalli for a long time, and yeah, just every few doors there was somebody that's a member of the church. And so also in our mission there was Tula, and that's pretty much the Salt Lake City of Mexico. That's where we were told that all the Mexican members first started, and that's kind of where the base was at first. And so people there have been members forever. So there's tons of not historical, but just people who have generations members of the church in Tula, and so that's also part of the mission. Well, in Mexico City, when I was there was 6, and so there's like north, south, east, west, northwest, and like southeast. I think there was another one. But then now that the mission I served in now divided into 3 other missions, and so that's a little different as well. A cool thing is that it has tons of Book of Mormon history there. There are quite a few pyramids and things in the mission, and so in Tula, there's pyramids there, and there's statues. You can look it up, just Tula, the pyramids of Tula, and they have temple clothes on there. And so it's very doctrinal. It's very cool to go see the history of that, and also go to Teotihuacan. It's a little outside the mission, but you're able to go once in your mission. And that's one of the really, really famous ones, where it has just pyramids lined up, like 12 pyramids, and then one of the moon, and then one of the sun. And it's really amazing to see all the history there that you can't see in any other mission. And so it's really cool that we were able to see that. I served in Guerrero, in Hidalgo, and then I did Tequixquiac in Hidalgo, and then I went to the ward was called La Colmena, and that's in Nicolas Romero in the state of Mexico. And then I was in Cuautitlan Izcalli, and then I was in still in Cuautitlan Izcalli, but I switched wards, and it's Arcos and then Izcalli ward. When people think of Mexico City, they think like the main city, and that's usually called DF, the federal district. And so that's like where you have to go to get your visas, to go do your paperwork and stuff. So that's what mainly people think of Mexico City. And so what our mission is probably an 1.5-hour drive north of that. And so driving north, it's still tons and tons of houses, and so they don't have almost any room apart, just tons of people, and all hills, like I said before. And so you just keep walking. One of my areas was just 3 hills like that, and it was really tough, but like I said, you have good calves afterwards. So, but the culture there just as nice. People are a little bit more closed than Hidalgo, but still we had lots of success in Mexico, just because there are tons of members already, and they really help a lot. A lot of times I grew up where it's really tough to have like member lessons, or there wasn't a lot of missionary work in my home ward. And so what I was really surprised about Mexico, when people came up, like, have a friend that wants to take the discussions, it was like, wow, I've never really had that before. Interesting. And so in Mexico, it was really easy to find people, because people always knew somebody that was a Mormon. And so they always like, oh yeah, what do you believe? And so it was just easy conversation. There's also lots of religions in Mexico. It's not just Catholic like sometimes we think. There are Jehovah's Witnesses, there are Christians, there are the really singing Christians, those kind, and then there's of course LDS Church. There's tons of different churches there. Even in Mexico City, there's a Jewish like section of it, and so there's a lot of Jewish there in Mexico City as well. The weather's similar, except it rains a lot, and it rains usually in the summer. So from like May to about August or so, it's just lots and lots of rain. And so that was kind of tough. We had umbrellas, but that doesn't help too much if you're walking uphill. All the rain's coming downhill, so you get home, you're completely soaked, but it was a fun experience too. And so they did have all the kind of burritos you have, not like the restaurants here where they just have a big burrito thing. They don't have things like that. It's just very small, and you just stick whatever you need to on your tortilla and then just eat that. So they have that. Mole was my favorite food, and that's, I think, I heard it described as chocolate sauce once. It's not really chocolate. It's like a spicy brown sauce. I don't really know how to explain it, but that is the best Mexican food in my opinion. You eat that, and then you just got rice and tortillas with that, and I can live off of that. Of course, tacos are awesome there. They just have little taco stands on the side of the road. And in American dollars, you can fill yourself up with about eight tacos and then a soda for about $4. And so that you get really full. And so that was usually our treat whenever, if we had a tough day or if we had a good day, whatever the reason was, we went out to eat tacos. That was what you did. They also have really good hamburgers there. They do have a little twists from what we have here. So there's a few areas I was in that they did have really good hamburgers, but we usually try to stick to the tacos. But they have everything you think of, like the enchiladas, tons of food like that we know of, but just 100% authentic, so it tastes a lot better. The best eggs I've ever had have been on the mission, and what I don't know exactly what they did, but somehow they did the eggs and then they made salsa at the same time, but then they took the liquid from the salsa and then stuck that in the eggs while they were cooking it, and so it was like half and half, and it was really good. They do have really hot salsa. The hottest I ever took was the last day of the mission, and she was just piling it on there, and I was thinking, oh, I've been on the mission for 2 years now, I could probably do something like that, but I was a little careful, so I only put like little drops on there, and I had to go to the bathroom, like try to wash out my mouth because it was too hot for me. So they love salsa there, so they'll try tons of it. They don't a lot of times they don't give you dessert. Dessert here we think of like cake or cheesecake, whatever, or ice cream. A lot of times there it's just a piece of fruit, and so that was surprising to me. Like when they said, "Elders, do you want dessert?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, cool," and then they'd give you a peach. I'm like, "Oh, all right, thank you." But it's not as much dessert. They just give you fruit as dessert now, and then they put some cream on it sometimes, and so that was pretty good. You do eat a lot of fruit there. They have tons of different fruit, and it's really cheap, and so every morning we'd have like mangoes or bananas or things like that. That was just really cheap there, and they're everywhere. And so also they just have tiendas, just little stores on the side of the street, and that's usually what you buy all your food from. And they just have tons of little treats. They have tons of candy there, tons of different kinds of drinks, and so you never go thirsty, you never go hungry, because you have plenty with the money you have, you can buy plenty of food. I never even got close to spending all the money that I could have. Everything's just a lot cheaper there as well, and so clothes and stuff. And so coming back to America, like the last P-Day there, I went, bought nice jeans, shirts and stuff, like all these designer brands, and I spent less than $50. And so that was cool too at the end. Mexicans love their music, and so you'll hear tons and tons of music. There's reggaeton, there's the Hidalgo one, and so that's the kind that you hear of the La Banda, and so that's the kind you hear in the restaurants and stuff. That's kind of what Hidalgo listen to, but more in the city, people like their boom, boom, boom kind of music, and so you hear that all on the buses. There's tons and tons of traffic, and so when jumping on the bus, you have to just jump on and then try not to fall down, because they don't really stop for you. And so you just jump on really quick, and they move on, and then they're blasting their stereo as loud as they can. And so you usually use those opportunities to sit next to somebody else and start talking to them. I really liked it. That's where I got my first accent from. That's where I started. And so they always end the end of their sentences like that. They always really cut it up and go up like that. And so, like, the joke we always said was like, "¿Dónde están las tortillas?" Because like, where are the tortillas? And so, but they always end on a short part. And so when I went to Mexico, they were like, "You speak funny," and my excuse was, "I'm new, I'm trying to learn the language still." We're like, no, that's not it. Your accent's weird. And then I realized, okay, that's because Hidalgo. And so their accent is it's really cut off really fast, and they talk really quick too. And so it was really tough at the beginning of the mission, because they just speak super fast, and their accent just kind of rolls together, and they end at the top. And so the accents were kind of funny, but eventually you got used to it. It was home after that. There's lots of cactuses, lots of dirt. The first area I was in was a very LDS populated community. It was only a village of probably 1,000 people, but there were 2 chapels. And so it was a little tough, because either they are members or they don't want to be members. And so it was kind of tough, but we still had a lot of success there. Like I said, there's lots of hills. There's tons of hills. Our area covered about 40-minute bus ride. And so we didn't have any bicycles, no cars or anything. It's just buses. And so we took a bus 45 minutes to the end of our area sometimes, worked there for the day, and then came all the way back at the end of the day. And so it really is just like little villages. And so the village we were in, it was just this little strip right here, a little bit on the hill, and then one big hill, and that was it. And so everyone's very country. Everyone's really nice though. It's just kind of a funny experience was we were walking on the street, and so Of course, people in that rural part of Mexico, they're not used to seeing Americans. And so we were walking, and I was with my companion, and he was from, I can't remember, Oaxaca. And so he was darker skinned, I was whiter skinned, and so we were walking down the street, and this guy on a tractor, like the ultimate Mexican that we think of here, he had the sombrero on his tractor going down the street, and then he looked at me, and we just kind of nodded like that, and he kind of nodded back, and then all of a sudden he turns back, and he was just so surprised that I was there, but he was nice about it. He's like, oh, hey güero. I'm like, oh, hey, and that's just what they call you, güero, gringo. That's just the normal saying. And so it was really funny. Kind of, they're all super nice in Hidalgo. The food there, lots of chicken. They eat lots of chicken there. So everyone has their own little pack of chickens they grow, and so sometimes we saw one chicken left in their stack, or whatever you call it, and when we went back for dinner that day, the chicken wasn't there, so we knew what we were eating, their last chicken. So it was kind of different. They do have really good salsa and really good tortillas. They make them all there on the spot, and so sometimes when we're walking down the street, even if they weren't members, they said, hey, do you guys want some tortillas? They'll say, sure, why not? And so they just give us some water and tortillas, and you sprinkle some lime and salt on it, and just roll it up and just eat it like that. And so that was a nice little thing, and they're really good. They're corn. In Hidalgo, they only have corn tortillas. They don't have any of the flour ones. Where I was, there wasn't anything like mentionable, really cool, no kind of historical sites. Like in the state of Hidalgo, like there's the Tula pyramids, but I was never in that area. We just kind of went and traveled there really quick just to see the pyramids, and we left on like P-Day. But there's no kind of crime, nothing bad ever happened to us in Hidalgo. Like I said, everyone's really nice there. It's just country folk, and so they aren't looking for trouble. They just farm, and they try to make with what they have. And so most people there are really, really poor. They just have little shacks. Multiple times we helped build houses or put roofs over their houses, so just so it wouldn't blow around in the wind. The weather there, when I was there from it was during Christmas time, so from October till about February I was in Hidalgo, and it was almost perfect weather. It wasn't too hot. It was probably max about 90 degrees ish. Some nights it got really cold though, especially during Christmas. So it does fluctuate a lot because it is like a desert. And so during Christmas we tried to have the heater on, but we couldn't because we didn't want to have too big of a bill. So we each had like 3 blankets, and that's how we studied too. We just rolled 3 blankets around us and tried to concentrate. But it was really cold during the winters. Probably not as cold as other missions, but it was definitely cold where we were at. Housing was a lot cheaper in Hidalgo than in Mexico. Cool. But like food and stuff, it's all pretty much the same price. In one of mine, it was 800 pesos, and we had a 2-story house, and so that's about $76 a month. And then when I went to Mexico, it was we were paying $1,500 for a 1-room apartment, so it was pretty much half the price as it was in Mexico. Crime in Mexico City, like I was in outskirts. It wasn't Mexico City, it was just in the state of Mexico, but that's just what the mission was called, so it's Mexico City. But the crime isn't really crazy. I only ever had one dangerous experience, and that's just where a drunk guy was walking down the dirt road that we were coming down with. We just finished with church. We're going to go to lunch. The members feed you lunch there. And so we were walking, and the guy's like, hey, elders. And so there's 3 words. There's either white guy or something like that, and then there's brothers. And so if they say brothers, they kind of know who you are, but they're not really any kind of close to the church, and so we try to be careful with those ones. But if they say elders, that's when they're like, oh, they probably talked to elders before, because that's what we're called. And so we stopped and we said hello, and so he came up, and so he's like, how you doing? So he grabbed my hand, and then at that moment he also put his arm around my shoulder and then grabbed my tie, and at that moment he then pulled out a knife out of his pocket and put it to my side and said, give me 20 pesos. And 20 pesos isn't a lot of money. This has never happened before, so I was kind of freaking out. I'm like, I'll give you 20 pesos, yeah, no problem. But unfortunately that day I wore my suit pants because we had a baptism, and so we're dressing nice, and all the coins always fell out of my pocket, and so I stuck all my coins and everything in my backpack. And of course that exact same day as well, my companion forgot his wallet, and so I was just paying for his bus tickets, so he didn't have anything. So while that's happening, my companion's just trying to distract him, so he's just showing him stuff, hey, blah, 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 blah. And then all at the same moment, and so we know that God did help us with this, all at the same moment, I pushed off of him, and then when he went to go try to stab me, my companion grabbed his wrist, and then grabbed the blade, and then broke the blade with his hand, and then threw the blade into the bushes. And then after that, I jumped on top of him, and then like, just kind of held him there on the ground, and then we both jumped up, and we could already see his friends coming down from the hill, probably more concerned than mad because they knew he was drunk, and so there's like, these two guys are going to beat up our friend, and so they were running down, and so we just backed up, and then everyone just kind of stopped. But that was the only experience ever on my mission, and that was only because just all at the wrong time. Everything happened, but I knew we had something to learn from that because everything worked to our advantage as well. So no one got hurt, nothing happened bad, but we did see the miracle that day, and we went to lunch afterwards a little shucking up, but it was fine after that. After we ate, kind of calmed down, got some water in us, but that was a pretty crazy experience. No, yeah, he didn't break his hand at all, nothing, and it was I think it was a kitchen knife, and so it was just like a normal. I wasn't really looking at the knife. I was trying to think of how to get out, but it was that big from what I remember. Just one of those probably steak knives so that you could just cut your food. It was just a normal one. It wasn't like a butter knife, so it was a real knife. And so that's why we were really surprised they didn't cut his hand at all, and it felt like it just came out really easy. Threw it in the bushes, and we went back afterwards to try to find the blade, but we didn't find it. So we don't know where that went. Mexicans are humble and friendly. And so a lot of people there didn't have almost anything, but they're still really happy. They still gave everything they could to you. And so that's why I felt really bad sometimes when people had us over to eat, that they didn't have anything. They didn't have like anything in their house. They just had the bed. Everybody has their TV, and then nothing. It was just a cement floor with a tin top and wood sides, and that was it. But they would still give us food to eat. They'd still say, "Do you need anything else? Do you need anything else?" And I say no because I don't want to take anything else than I already feel. But that kind of humbled me as well, the saying all these people have nothing and they're willing to give so much to us. And they're just really friendly too. So even if they aren't interested, the hard thing is that they won't tell you that they aren't interested. They'll still listen to you, and then you just kind of have to figure out for yourself if they're actually interested in the gospel or if they're just being nice. And so that was the hard part of trying to get distinguished, because you knock doors and almost every door will listen to you for a second. And so you had to kind of distinguish, oh, they're just being nice. Do you know anybody else that'll be interested? Or they'll actually start listening to you and go into their house. And so every day we at least, I think on average it was about 3 or 4 lessons a day, like new lessons. And so knocking doors or whatever. And so we'd meet 3 to 4 new people a day just because everyone was so nice. Let us in their house, and we at least able to teach them the first lesson, and then hopefully teach them after that. But yeah, very nice people, very humble, and overall I love Mexico. So yeah. So for packing, you don't need too much. You don't wear suits a lot. You only wear them on baptism days and on Sundays, and so you don't have to wear them around. You just wear short sleeve shirts the whole time. It's perfect weather, so you don't have to worry about really wearing a sweater or anything. In our mission, we couldn't wear sweaters because people that are going to school, that's the part of their uniform, and so our mission president didn't want us to look like students, and so we just wore the white shirt or a long white shirt. You don't have to worry about packing too much, so just a few pairs of pants, a few shirts, and of course anything else you feel like you need. You don't have to bring too many personal stuff, because there you'll find lots of cool toys that you'll start playing with, and eventually you'll lose all of your stuff anyways. And what I did is I brought 2 pairs of shoes, and I used one the first year, one the second year, and then in the middle of the mission I bought a nice pair for church. And so I had my working shoes, and then I had my church shoes, so at least going to church I looked really nice, professional. But then working out outside, of course, I wore the shoes that I was wearing there. So that's probably the best advice of clothes. You don't really need some kind of heavy jacket. Maybe something just for when it rains, so maybe a light kind of waterproof jacket. But like I said, it doesn't get too cold except in December, so it probably wouldn't matter too much for you. My first area, of course, and so we went out to go eat tacos, and my companion says he wants 2 tacos de suadero. And so suadero, that's pretty close to cuaderno. And so I said cuaderno. So, dos tacos de cuaderno, por favor. And that's 2 tacos of notebook, please. And so I said that, and he's like, what'd you say to me? And I'm like, I don't know. And so my companion corrected me and ordered the right tacos for me. But that's the biggest one I could think of. We knocked on her house, and then she let us in. Her husband was fixing things outside. Unfortunately, he didn't want to listen to us, so we just decided to take advantage, and we talked to her. We were teaching the lesson, and then we just felt really strongly like they're getting a divorce, and that was like the biggest thing. And so the whole lesson, we were just saying, you can fix what your husband, you can fix all these things, blah blah blah. And just applying it perfectly, and it was just so smooth. And so at the end of also what we did is during Joseph Smith's first prayer, during that whole experience, we usually what my companion at that time were doing, so we had them close their eyes and imagine what that was actually, how that was, and how what he was seeing. And so we did that. It's like, so what do you what do you think, like how are you feeling, sorry, it's kind of hard to say, but what did you see, like how do you feel, what do you have to say? And he's like, I don't know, I couldn't see anything because I was just feeling this thing, and it was overwhelming me inside of me, just this warmth. And so we're like, awesome. So we explained that was a spirit, and that was the first time she had ever felt that. And so she's also like, and how did you know about my husband and my problems? And so we again testified of the spirit and everything. And so that was a really cool experience of how the spirit helps you to teach. And it's not all the knowledge you can know everything in the world, but the spirit knows how to apply it to each person. So it was really cool to see that.
Awesome.
Probably the craziest that was most awkward to me was the chicharrones, and that's like pig skin that's either dried or put in salsa, and you just eat that with a tortilla. It ends up being okay at the end of the mission, but at the beginning it's really it's the weirdest texture you'll eat. So that's probably the weirdest. Probably just hard work pays off, just because no matter how hard the day was or whatever, we always had like at least one good thing happen. And so if nobody answered their doors, if all of our appointments fell through, at least we were able to visit an inactive person and then change their whole week around, or we were able to visit or help somebody. And so no matter, like 12 hours passed by and it sucked, but somewhere in between we were able to see something like, oh yeah, that was a good experience. And so every day, no matter how hard we were working, we were able to see something like that. But I know that because we were working hard, we were blessed by those kind of experiences. Probably play the trompo. It's a toy kids a lot of times play with there. And so it's like a yo-yo. So a few of elders and we got really good at it. And so we had competitions of how cool of tricks we could do with those. Rain. It rains really hard sometimes, and it comes out of nowhere. And so sometimes we're in a lesson, and then all of a sudden we just hear it just going like crazy. And then of course we had to walk uphill to our house. So it's pretty tough to walk against the rain while it's flooding down a hill. And so that's probably the craziest weather. Yeah, you got home and there wasn't a part of your body that wasn't dry. So it was very wet. I don't remember how much or whatever, just because the worst memories I have is just walking up the hill at 9 o'clock at night after we're all done. It's still raining. We have our umbrellas, but those don't work anymore because rain's coming from all angles. And just walking up, not even caring anymore. We're just walking. We're soaked. Oh well. So just one area is just very difficult because there were just tons of religions in this little tiny town, and so there were only we opened up the area, and there was two active families in the whole town, and the closest chapel was a half an hour away, and church started at 8 o'clock. And so we had to find investigators with the 2 members we had, and then put them on a bus at about 7:20 in the morning to be able to get to the house of prayer by 8 o'clock. And so it turned people off a lot, saying, would you go to church? Like, oh yeah, no problem, where's it at? Oh, it's in the next town over. Oh, that's 30 minutes away. Yeah, and it's at 8 o'clock. Okay. And so it was really tough because it was just, we didn't have a nice chapel for them to see. We didn't have nice anything. It was just a house. And so that was pretty tough. And eventually, once more people started getting baptized, then there was more members, and then more people knew who we were. And so, but at the beginning, it was really tough because no one knew who we were. that was pretty tough. Probably just not to fall out of your habits. I just every habit that I dropped was just one at a time, and so I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna get up at 6:30 anymore. I don't have to, and then I started getting up later, and then like oh, it's okay. I won't read the scriptures today. Like I'm fine. I read it yesterday, and so there's one habit at a time, and so then you have to just pick those back up, and it's a lot harder to get those habits back. And so now that like I do it every day, I saw the difference of when I on the mission. Of course, it was a spiritual high that I got off, that was a low, and now that I'm back, so I've seen the difference, and I know that you got to keep those habits strong, or you'll start to feel the difference again. Well, welcome to the Mexico City North Mission. It's really the best mission in the world. Everyone says that, but they just lie. Like, this is really the best mission. You're gonna have awesome food, awesome people, awesome elders, of course. It's just a great experience overall. The best advice that I could give to you is just forget yourself. That's probably the biggest thing that impacted me, is that the story of President Hinckley, when he was ready to go home or whatever, he wrote home to his father and he says, forget yourself and get back to work. And that's really what helped me a lot in my mission, is that just forget home, forget everything there. You dedicated 2 years to our Father in heaven, and you need to just dedicate everything to him. It'll fly by. The time will fly by super quickly, and you'll enjoy it. A lot of the people that I have seen that we're counting the days till they go home, or we're counting how many times they've been out and just kind of waiting for it to be over. It was a long 2 years. And so my advice to you is just get yourself the strongest testimony you can right now, because it'll grow on the mission, but it's more important for you to know why you're out there at the moment. If you don't know right now, that's fine. That's okay. Just make it a goal for yourself to find a few doctrinal points every month or something that you need to know for sure. So if it's tithing, try to build a testimony of tithing. If it's the scriptures, try to build a testimony of scriptures first. Because if you can't know for yourself, then how can you teach other people? And so that's my advice to you, is try to have the best testimony you can. It doesn't have to be perfect, but the best you can to be able to share with other people. Just work hard. There's no time for laziness. You need to work as hard as you can, and God will see the effort you putting into it, and He'll bless you and your family because of it. You don't have to worry about Mexico being dangerous. You don't have to worry about getting lost. You'll always have people there to help you. There's tons of members down there, so you'll also have tons of food to eat. They always feed you way too much. Make sure you stay away from any kind of cactuses. There's tons of stuff to poke you. But overall, you'll enjoy your mission. Overall, you'll enjoy building your testimony and seeing the lives of other people change. It's the greatest thing to see when somebody that you baptized gets up inside of a meeting and bears their testimony. And so that's one of the craziest things that you will see, or at least in my mission, is when somebody got up and said that they know this church is true. And that was the greatest thing to me, where I was able to feel the Spirit and say it was worth it being here. And everything back at home, it didn't seem like it was worth anything. And that right there in that moment, that's where I was supposed to be. And I know you as well. You going on a mission and making that decision, you'll find those people as well that you needed to go on your mission for, and that you will find and change your lives forever, not only in this life, but for the eternities. And so you being on your mission isn't for 2 years. It's able to change their lives and every generation from now on throughout eternity in their lives. And so I wish you the best of luck, and just work hard and don't give up.